Hello, everybody. Welcome to Black Sabbath weekend again. This is going to be video number 2 of the studio albums of Black Sabbath. This will be the Dio years, as in Ronnie James Dio replacing Ozzy Osbourne in the band. Now, Ozzy was doing a lot of drugs in the late 70s. I mean, as was the whole band, okay? But the problem was Ozzy was just he didn't want to sing any of the new songs that Tony and Geezer were writing for the band. I think Ozzy was just going down on a downward spiral. He was probably the worst doing the drugs of the band. And I guess they got fed up with him. And on April 27th, 1979, Tony asked the drummer, Bill Ward, who was closest to Ozzy personally. Tony asked Bill to basically fire Ozzy. As crazy as that sounds, that's what happened. So Black Sabbath was left without a singer, and they employed Ronnie James Dio, formerly of Rainbow, to step in and take over the mic duties for Black Sabbath. And on April 18th, 1980, they released this behemoth, Heaven and Hell. Now, if you remember back in the day, you remember the Columbia House or RCA, Records and Tapes Club? Back when I was a kid, teenager growing up, these were in magazines and whatever. Sometimes they would just send them to houses. And you could pick 13, I think it was 13 albums, choose cassette or vinyl records. And then it was like a little contract. You got those for free or for I think a penny. Those 13 that you picked out of the list they gave you. And then you had to buy a certain number of albums at regular price over the next year, I guess. And that's what I did. And I did it twice, actually. The first time I did it and ordered cassettes. And instead of, taking it to the mailbox, I didn't want to tell my parents because they don't understand. They didn't understand all this stuff as far as, how you're going to pay for this when they want you to buy albums. So the first time I did it, I put it in the mailbox for the post office guy, the mailman, to pick up. And I went to school. Wasn't thinking. Well, Dad came home from work early, sick or something, while I was in school. And of course, he got there, he got to the mailbox before the mailman came. And I remember coming home from school and getting yelled at. What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Dad, oh, all right, whatever. So he he threw it away. But I don't know, 2 weeks later, I decided to do it again. And I thought, what's the chances of, them finding out this time? So I did it again. And one of the records I remember I ordered was this. And I had no idea that Ozzy was out of the band. No clue. Because I didn't read any publications, like Cream Magazine or Hit Parader very often. Sometimes I'd see them at the grocery store, and while Mom was shopping, I'd read them. But I don't remember, I didn't catch the issue where Ozzy, had left the band. So I had no clue. When I got this, I thought, oh, cool, a new album from Black Sabbath. I'd never heard of it, It was just released, I believe, and yeah, this thing was awesome. It's one of my all-time favorite Black Sabbath albums. Okay, there's the back. The best track by far is Heaven and Hell. It's an epic song. My God, there's some good stuff on here. Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, Die Young, Lady Evil. Fantastic album. All original members except for Ronnie, you know. Still had Bill Ward on the drums, Tony Iommi on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass. Okay. And let's see, this hit number 9 on the UK charts and number 28 on the US Billboard charts. And it went platinum and produced by Martin Birch, who has produced a lot of albums for Deep Purple. Went on to do, you know, all those 80s albums, except for the debut of Iron Maiden. He did all those. Number of the Beast, Power Slave, you know, Peace of Mind, Seventh Son. He produced all of them. So he and did all the famous ones from Deep Purple, like In Rock, and Machine Head. So he's a pretty famous producer. And he's good. Because every album he's ever produced that I have from those bands, and Whitesnake too. He did some Whitesnake albums. They're fantastic, all the ones he produces. And this one's no exception. Excuse me. Fantastic album. One of my all-time favorites. I've also got the deluxe version they released in 2021. And this is a 2-record set. So here's the gatefold. Looks like those are some single sleeves, I'm guessing, up top. Big write-up. There's the back, same as the original. And a lot of these are live tracks. They call them like live B-sides. It has Children of the Sea, live B-side of the single of Neon Nights. Heaven and Hell, the live 7-inch edit B-side of Die Young single. Lady Evil, the mono 7-inch edit. Neon Nights, live 1980. Children of the Sea, again, this is live 1980. Heaven and Hell, live 1980. And Die Young, live 1980. And this is, you know, remastered and fantastic. That covers Heaven and Hell. Now, a year later, on the 4th of November, 1981, the same band except for Bill Ward, he left the band and was replaced by drummer Vinny Appice. They released on the 4th of November of 81, The Mob Rules. Another kick-ass album. There's the back. And the best track for me by far, well, I don't know by far, but there's some great songs on here. Falling Off the Edge of the World, Voodoo, The Mob Rules, Sign of the Southern Cross, Slipping Away, Turn Up the Night, Country Girl, which is I think Country Girl and Voodoo are definitely underrated tracks on this album. The Mob Rules is the best song, but those other two are really killer. And not a lot of people talk about them. And this also went platinum. I've got the deluxe version of this one too. 2-record set. Inside, here's the gatefold. Now, extra tracks here are the Mob Rules from the Heavy Metal soundtrack, which is just a little bit different than the original Mob Rules song on the album. Die Young, the live B-side of the Mob Rules single. The Mob Rules, a new 2021 mix. Sign of the Southern Cross and Heaven and Hell, live in Portland, Oregon, 22nd of April 1982. Then you got from the live at the Hammersmith Odeon, Country Girl, Slipping Away, The Mob Rules, and Voodoo. And those all, I believe, were previously unreleased. So, yeah. Great album. Again, I showed you that already. Fantastic. every bit as good as Heaven and Hell, in my opinion. I think these two albums are like sister albums, to be honest with you. They kind of go together. Because soon after this album, Dio left, Ronnie left the band. And I'll tell you why. They were, on the Mob Rules tour, they recorded, some shows. And they were getting ready to release a live album. The first one in Black Sabbath's history that's licensed. Other than a bootleg or whatever. Live Evil, during the mixing and producing all that, though I guess there was some infighting in the band, and Ronnie didn't like the way it was being produced. So he would sneak in late at night and turn up the volume on the vocals and the drums. And then the next day, Tony would come in, Ronnie wasn't there, and he would turn it back down. And this went on for a little while, apparently. And, finally that just caused the band, not the band to split up, but for Ronnie and Vinny, the drummer, to leave the band. Now, they would return 11 years later, in 1992. They would return to the band, so it was them two, Vinny, Ronnie, Geezer on bass, and Tony on guitar, of course. He's the one member that stayed throughout the whole time of the history of the band. And they would return, and on June 22nd, 1992, they released Dehumanizer. I don't have an original copy because, like in the late 80s and the early 90s, they didn't produce as much vinyl. That was kind of going by the wayside for a while because CDs emerged and just took over. So it's really hard to find an original copy of this album unless I want to pay hundreds of dollars, and I'm not willing to do that. But I did buy this deluxe version. That way I had a copy of the album. Because, I got to have all the Black Sabbath albums, Duh. And here's the gatefold. And this hit number 28 on the UK chart and number 44 on the US Billboard chart. So it didn't do as well as those. You got to remember in 1992 what rose to the top of the rock charts: grunge, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. There was a big cultural shift in rock. And it went to grunge, and that was all over MTV, all over the radio. So yeah, bands like Black Sabbath were looked at as dinosaurs. And how stupid is that? I mean, yeah, they're old, but these guys created a genre. Black Sabbath is responsible pretty much for creating heavy metal. So yeah, whatever. That grunge stuff, I like some of it, but it don't hold a candle to this stuff. Not Black Sabbath. Come on. But yeah. But that's what happened. Now, there is another album, okay, that Dio came back again for a third time to Black Sabbath. And this was in 2006 to 2009. He rejoined the band. But Ozzy Osbourne and Sharon, his wife, filed a lawsuit saying they couldn't use the Black Sabbath name without Ozzy being in the band. I don't really agree with that, okay, only because Ozzy was fired for doing too many drugs and didn't want to participate in the band. Why do they get to have control, when Tony, he's been in the band. He was the one that stayed with the band the whole time. He should get say, not them. But Ozzy, Sharon, they won in courts. They've got more money, so they had to change the name to Heaven and Hell. The band did. So they released one album, The Devil You Know, in 2007. No, I'm sorry, 2009. And I don't have that copy, but it was announced recently that Heaven and Hell is, Tony is going to release the Heaven and Hell box set. And since, Sharon can't stop that because it's not under the Black Sabbath name. So they're going to release this box set with The Devil You Know, the one studio album they did under that name, and 2 live shows. So I pre-ordered that. So when that comes, it's supposed to be released March 27th. So when that comes, I'll definitely do a video, an unboxing video of that. And I can't wait to get that. So that will complete my Black Sabbath collection. So, well, there you go. That's the Dio years. So the next video is going to be just about everything else. The Tony Martin years. There's one album that Glenn Hughes sang on, who was in Deep Purple in the 70s after Ian Gillan quit. And there's also, I'm going to add 13 on the end of that. The last album Sabbath did in 2013, that Ozzy returned. So that'll be the next video. Until then, happy Valentine's Day.